the Soul's Conquest. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Soul's Conquest, where we have Alex Snider coming all the way from her new apartment, which I don't know where you're located. I completely forgot. Alex, where are you based out of?
I am based in Playa del Carmen, Mexico.
Ooh, nice. Thank you for coming from all the way from Mexico and being here with us, sharing your story, sharing your presence. I'm extremely grateful. Let's dive into it.
I am. So am I. Thank you so much. I'm so excited for this.
Yeah, amazing. So for those of the people who are new in the audience, who have never been acquainted with your work or your presence before, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. Well, my clients call me a few things. Coachsultant, business therapist,
Nice.
strategy siren. And I think I call myself a business scale-up coachsultant. And what that means is that I work with visionary founders, entrepreneurs, leaders to take businesses from scrappy to established.
Nice.
With solidified operations and strong leadership in teams that essentially makes profitable growth inevitable.
Ooh.
And it's right.
Yeah, I was like, damn, okay.
And because startups are hard and growth is not all growth is created equal.
Yeah.
Right. Like you so often see growth without profit, and most startups go under because they spend their money too quickly.
Yeah.
And I would say it's always a really bespoke journey based on the client's needs, because every business comes in a different place, needs different things. But typically our work together focuses on people and management, processes, and then the leadership identity that needs to go with that growth.
I love that a lot. Resonate with that a lot, because having been an entrepreneur, I still am, but every coach is an entrepreneur basically at one point of time in the journey. It gets very chaotic very fast. You're not ready for some of the stuff that comes up. You're just like, why? How?
Why?
Yeah.
I feel like that's the entrepreneur question. Why and why me?
Yeah. Ooh, why me? So tell us a little bit about how you started on this journey. How did you come to be I'm going to help businesses scale up and I'm going to be a coach? How did it all come into being and fall into place?
How much time do we have?
We have all the time in the world. You go crazy. The spotlight is on you. Yeah.
All right. It has been a journey for sure. And I have done a ton of reflecting, particularly recently, and really looking back and realizing that strategy for me actually started in my athletic career. So I competed in equestrian at quite a high level, kind of trained with Olympic athletes, and strategy there is actually really similar to the military origins of strategy, because you show up at a competition and you go physically walk a terrain and you look at angles and you look at obstacles and kind of your horse or your team, and maybe the opposition, and you then make a plan, and then as other people go, you maybe adjust your plan through the observations and the performance, and then you're in the ring for 45 to 60 seconds. And in that total time, depending on what happens, let's say you knock a jump down, you pivot, you make a shift in the plan you had to one of the other scenarios to try and come out with the optimal outcome. And I also played rugby for about 20 years. Nice. And it's a little bit different, but really similar in that you set a plan, you see the field, you find the gaps, and then you find a way to get your team through the gaps of the opponent while closing the gaps in your own defense, as quickly and efficiently as possible. So I know that seems probably a little out there to be I'm talking about business, let me talk about sports, but more and more I'm seeing the parallels and finding it a really, really great medium to explain to people, because so many entrepreneurs are doing this for the first time, or they're doing it in a completely different context than they've done before. So from there, the origin story, I had a variety of different roles. They were largely in entrepreneurial or small, medium-sized businesses. I like to call them the trial by fire, where like you come in and there's not really anyone to tell you what your job is. You kind of have to figure it out.
Yeah.
And I was like really, really young, but I just kind of was always problem solving, always really analytical. I ended up being director of marketing for a team of surgeons. And then I went on to do an MBA in strategy and leadership with all the regular stuff like finance and operations. And I got my dream job, you know, I mean, we're talking about, you know, the recession, housing crisis. It was a really difficult time to be looking for a job. And I was really fortunate. I went into strategy consulting. I did about a decade focused mostly on energy and natural resources and extractive industries. There's a whole story there that was for another time.
Yeah.
And I did strategy work, I did operational improvement, and I also did mergers and acquisitions. So that took me all over the world, like North America, Africa, Europe. I love travel, it's my raison d'etre. I love experiences, I love being off the beaten path. So really loved it, learned a lot. I always say consulting is kind of like business on steroids, you know, probably get about 30 years of normal experience in 10 years.
Yeah.
Please. Partly just the hours, but also just the exposure that you get to so many different organizations, so much different leadership, so many different approaches. And I then just decided that the next step, I was in the UK at that point. I was being pushed towards partner track, which is like amazing. But it didn't feel like the right step for me. I wasn't feeling as aligned and so much impact with our projects. And I wasn't really being the best me, which I don't think I really understood at the time, and is probably very relevant to this podcast because I think it was nearing kind of burnout. But I knew something was off, and I knew that it kind of felt like this was my last off ramp that was sort of like a, you know, horizontal shift rather than like, or like a sidestep rather than like something that would be a big down step. You know, it's hard to leave once you become a partner in a big consulting firm.
Yeah.
And so I made a pretty radical decision, and I left my job with no other job lined up. I sold everything and I became nomadic.
Wow. Okay. Okay. Wow.
And what I then did was really focus on like what felt most important to me. And I wanted to feel inspired, and I wanted to feel connected, and I wanted to feel healthy. And I just made all of my decisions based on feeling that way. So that means that I really started to learn and focus on like my body and my mind. And I also explored a lot. So I volunteered with social venture related areas. I sat on the boards of startups. I just really dug into like seeing what was out there. I mean, I'd just come out of a career that when I had graduated high school, I didn't know existed. I was like, what else is out there? Right? Like, what else don't I know?
Yeah.
And I knew that I wanted to work with smaller organizations and places where there was a little more buy-in, where there was a little more alignment, where everybody kind of wants to be there and you get to help build as much or more as you get to fix. And I think that was something that felt like really inspiring for me. So I basically took all my tools that I'd collected through, you know, my years in corporate and before, and I ended up partnering into a former classmate startup, which was a digital reality design and development agency. It had seen really strong growth, and it had what I described before, where it had seen that growth, but it hadn't really seen a lot of profit. And then it had plateaued. So it was at like, you know, a tough place. We talked a while. I sat on the board. I'd done a bit of consulting for them, and kind of came to the decision that like coming in and like really driving the next level of development, the next iteration, you know, 2.0 would be something that I was really well equipped to do. And simultaneously, we co-founded another startup for a technology platform in like a really burgeoning industry. So I structured that and started fundraising for that as well. And that was in late 2018. So we're getting there.
Yeah, no, go for it. Yeah.
And it was really a wild ride that culminated in a successful sale of the agency last April.
Nice.
As you can imagine, in that time frame, there was COVID, there was a lot of things. We learned a lot and we had to rebuild through COVID, but actually we're really fortunate because the sale that fell through at the very beginning of COVID, we actually tripled the business in size in the year and then exited at a year later. So it was rough, but we got there, and it was really, really a good result in the end for my business partner and for myself. And yeah, in that time of doing all that work, I started to really realize how much I loved working with founders and how being kind of co-CEO or COO or whatever role, it didn't feel as sustainable for me. I have a penchant for overgiving, overcommitting, and the business or the leaders became really reliant on you in those roles. And what I actually enjoyed so much more was supporting them in figuring out how to scale, how to grow an amazing and engaged team, and to be sustainable so that I could actually work with more founders. And for me, the way that I work with them is in a way that works better for my kind of boundaries and needs as well. Yeah. So when we sold the business, I did go across as the VP strategy and operations as part of the deal for the buyer. And alongside that, I started to formalize my coaching business and started taking on clients. And now here we are, and I get to just do what I love full time and really build a life that just lights me up in a way that I don't think I could have ever imagined.
Yeah, that was a wonderful journey for sure. And I have a few questions off of it. So my very first question is this: do you feel, now that you look back and reflect on how your life has kind of unfolded, if you will, that everything that you did basically helped you be where you are or reach where you are, right? Like, you were talking about how rugby and strategizing were very similar in the fact that it follows through the same thing, right? Like, you strengthen your defense, find a hole in their defense, pivot, and you reach the end goal. So do you feel like everything that you did so far in your journey to reach where you are as a coach right now was important and was very similar in the ways that they help you right now?
Absolutely. I think everything, when I look back on it, has led me to be here, has brought out the best kind of innate qualities in me, as well as all the work and learning that have then augmented those. I was a very reticent leader. I was actually really shy. I never fit in. Sports was quite like a refuge for me. And yet I would never run for it, but I would be selected to be captain of my teams. Yeah. I have always been somebody who can think 10 steps ahead, plan and execute. And those are not necessarily valued when you're younger, right? Yeah. Like thinking differently, or like just being able to like scenario plan or analyze in your brain and be like, see the answer so clearly. This is like, doesn't endear you to other children.
Yeah. Yeah.
But absolutely, I feel like even when I was fairly young, I would end up coaching like other players. I would get asked to, I remember in high school getting asked to coach the junior men's, new scrum half at some point. And I really have always excelled at that. I just didn't see it until a lot later in life. Yeah. And similarly in my consulting, I did a lot of executive coaching as part of our projects. And, when it's perspective, right? 2020, when you look back on it, you're like, oh, here, and then here, and then here, like there's the thread that now makes so much sense.
Yeah, I love that. Do you regret anything though? Do you regret a part of your journey that you think you wouldn't have wanted to go through?
That is such a hard question.
I'm sorry.
No, it's a good question. Like good questions are always hard.
Yeah.
I think as humans, we're so wired to avoid discomfort that there's always things that we want to pull away from. And at the same time, anyone listening to this who is really into growth knows that that's, discomfort, that being on your edge is where
Yeah.
it's at. So I would say no. And I would maybe caveat it with, there are some things I would have moved through quicker had I had the tools I have now.
I love that. I love that a lot. Okay, so I wanted to ask you about pivot. You said that pivoting is very important in a game, right? Like finding and pivoting. How important do you think pivoting is when you are an entrepreneur starting a new business? Like, and especially because you have worked with founders in your experience, both as an entrepreneur, as a leader, and as someone who coaches leaders, how important do you think pivoting is?
I think it's so important. And I'll elaborate on that. But before I elaborate on it, I will also say the ability to stay the course is important. So you have to figure out that you need to be able to take in new information, digest it, and act on it very quickly to ensure that you're not traveling in the wrong direction for extended periods of time to your detriment. However, entrepreneurs have shiny object syndrome.
They do.
So you cannot constantly be reinventing or chasing something new without putting due process, structure, and energy into what you want to achieve and getting the clarity and momentum behind it to actually succeed. And that is where the term serial entrepreneur can be really positive or really negative. So it can be the person who has a string of successes, or it can be the person who has a new idea every 3 months and never gets anything off the ground.
I love that. Oof, I feel like, so I have this thing where I make a drinking game every episode that I do, is because I end up saying one sentence throughout the podcast, right? And I feel like I love that is going to be the sentence for this week. You guys start drinking water, stay hydrated, no alcohol.
Hydrate.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you this. Why coaching though? You could have chosen to be a mentor. You could have done so many other things. Why did you decide to be a coach specifically?
It's funny. It took me a very long time to decide or feel comfortable calling myself a coach.
Ooh, okay.
I think the coaching industry has blown up and it kind of feels like everyone and their brother is a coach. And it's actually not that different than consulting. When I was in consulting, people were like, what does that mean? Or I would have people say, oh, a consultant is someone who takes your watch to tell you the time, right? There's a lot of perspectives and definitions that go with any word. And I find it really interesting in the industry. I'm always looking at how people define the difference between a consultant, a coach, a mentor, a teacher. What is that? And I think at some point you have to just choose a term, which is why I actually love when one of my clients was like, you're like a Coachsultant. And I was like, I want to trademark that, because I realize that a lot of my clients, with whatever backgrounds they come from, there's a lot of understanding what is out there, what is available to them, what the options are, in order to then merge that with their vision and their desires, make a decision and start to create and structure what they want. And I think that is where, as a consultant, I could come in and run a project for you and do it. That is no longer what I want to do. And I really wanted to differentiate from consulting, since I especially had spent so much time in that space. And I think traditionally, coaching in the coaching industry, particularly if you think about life coaching, is very much about asking questions. The answers lie within you. And that is true to an extent in what I do. However, there is information that maybe is like an experienced mentor showing you, you know, what they've seen. So I'll be honest, I don't know whether I have the right title. And I think that's where I spend a lot of time up front understanding where my clients are and what they need, and then explaining how I work, and that my role is really about, you know, yes, I provide resources, but it's facilitation, guidance, you know, providing them the breadth of experience I've had to inform them so that they can then look inside and I can objectively challenge, ask them the questions to help them come to their decisions.
Yeah.
I don't know if that answers the question.
It did very well. I feel like a lot of times we get stuck on the term, right? And it becomes such a huge thing. Like, do you know, like I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but a lot of people, including myself, get stuck on the Instagram bio a lot. Like, we have to perfect it, otherwise we won't get clients. And I've been stuck on that for a pretty long time. So, you know, just that relief that it's okay if you don't know what to call yourself, as long as you're doing the service, right? Like, what service are you providing, and are you providing it to the best of your abilities and helping your client while doing that? Be like, I love that answer definitely a lot. My next question to you is this, Alex. What do you hope to achieve when you're working with a new client? So you have mentioned that, you know, you coach them. There's a lot of life coaching plus strategizing and mentoring, a lot of aspects mixed together. But what is the end result you hope to deliver to your client when you are in a coaching container with them?
Such a good question. It is complex, and honestly, the longer I do it, the more I realize the complexity and the interdependence between tangible and intangible. I would say that helping them scale by navigating the seasons of growth and stabilization required is a really big part of it. Empowering them with tools and then guidance to build the strong foundations to support their vision that they have. So it's, like I said before, it's really not a one size fits all, but you need to understand the options or scenarios available to you in order to analyze and assess what you desire, and then craft and implement from there. And maybe, to the earlier point, pivot along the way. And then really up leveling their leadership so that it keeps pace with the growth of the business. There are so many layers to foundership or leadership, and it's very, very hard to build and grow without doing the personal or leadership development, but it's not impossible. And if you as a leader get left behind, the fallout can be really, really, really challenging in terms of culture risk, reputation risk, burnout, attrition, and rebuilding after that is hard. So we work a lot on that and on the team engagement, incentives, ownership, autonomy for the team, and also for the founder to be able to start building leadership and honing their role from like everything, like I do everything, I'm the founder, to this is my zone of genius, this is my role. And then that allows them to go from being really alone, often kind of an exasperated entrepreneur, to having everything, you know, and yeah, everything going through you, to having values and governance, processes and people that allow for decisions to be made, the business to run without your fingers touching just every single button along the way. Like, that's where I say kind of scrappy to established is the journey that I take my clients on.
Oh, I genuinely love that. I don't know how many I love that has been so far, but I love it because I feel like this is a problem a lot of entrepreneurs go through, right? And I want to ask you this: how important do you think self-development or personal development is for a leader, no matter at what point of their journey they are in? Like, do you think that, okay, so there are two questions, right? The first question is, how important do you think self-development is for leaders, and do you think it matters what point of their journey they are in?
I think it's paramount. And I don't say that just because it's part of what I do. I think if you look at, the biggest and the best, they talk about it, they, share about it, and, they probably didn't used to, but more and more, thankfully, our culture and society is really supporting and encouraging that. And if you look at some of the biggest names in business, they talk about their struggle. They talk about what they had to learn about themselves, what they had to figure out, what they had to overcome. It's not just, numbers and operations and finances, it's not just the technology. It was, how do I become a visionary? How do I become a leader? How do I inspire others? So I think leadership or personal development, whatever you want to call it, is fundamental to success anywhere, but in particular in business. And I think that it may look like anything, it may look different at different levels. But I think it's also based on when you start, right? If you start while you're small, it's going to grow with you. If you start when you're already in a senior management position, it's going to grow with you. So yeah, I think
no
it's
fault
so critical.
no fault in joining late, right? Like there is no bad thing that can happen. There is no, oh, I can't do this because it's too late for me to work on myself. Like
100%. I mean, what's the expression? The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today.
Now, yeah. Oh, I love that. And I just have to say, I mean, that made a lot of sense to me, because as a burnout coach, I often say this, right? I'm like, your foundation is everything, right? You can start a business on crumbly foundation and you can still succeed, but there will come a point of time when there's way too much going on, especially if you are like, you don't have your personal development, you don't have a healthy way of communicating with yourself, you don't have a lot of stuff, not a lot of great ways to manage your stress, manage your time, and you will burn out because the foundation's crumbly, is going to fall, and you're just going to be like, why did this happen? Like, I thought I was good, like, why did this happen? So building a foundation is very good, but even if you are at a point of time in your life where things are at a very high level, it doesn't mean that there's a lot of stigma around burnout, because it means I am bad, I am not good enough, I'm not worthy enough to handle a business, and my burnout is proof of that. So people tend to ignore it, people tend to be like, I'm a push through it, which just worsens it. But there is no bad time to start working on yourself and burnout and all of it all. Yeah.
And I see that so much. Like a lot of my clients come in with some baggage around that from their past careers or whatever they're doing. And I think it's a really big part of what I'm looking to help them with. It's why the intangible part is just as important as the tangible processes, corporate structures, equity programs, systems that we work on. Is I really want them to see their priorities from a different angle.
Yeah.
That they can take control of their personal and professional, like understanding what makes them thrive and how it's to the benefit of the business. It's not, and them, like, it's not me or the business, which we hear so much about sacrifice and hustle culture.
Yeah.
I want my clients to feel confident and clear in their leadership role. I want this to allow them to spend 80 to 90% of their time in their zone of genius, where they're in flow, where they're contributing, maximum impact, with ease, right? So that the rest of the business is taken care of by everything that we've built together, so that they enjoy it more. When my clients tell me that I feel more confident in this and I'm enjoying the journey more, I'm like, yes, my job, and really just to have a business that lights them up. As entrepreneurs, we love our businesses and we give to them so much. And we just don't seem to have that expectation that it should be like any relationship, right? Like it should be a two-way street.
Yeah.
And it should support their other life ambitions. And I mean, that could be anything, but for some of my clients, it's making a difference in the world through social impact focus. For some of them, it's family, being a role model to their kids, breaking intergenerational trauma or wealth, redefining work, you know, by starting with their company and themselves, or redefining industry norms, or just like whatever moves them.
Yeah.
I want them to feel like empowered and confident, and that, you know, they're doing it, because there's so much fire within them.
Yeah, I actually loved what you said about not only helping them be in this zone of genius, but also experience the different aspects of themselves, right? Because that's something that, again, is so unique to burnout. And what I do with burnout is like, there's not just you, the business owner version of you. There is so much more that you have been brushing aside, that you have been like, you can't come because I'm here, right? Like, it's like wearing that business leader hat and never removing it ever again, because business leader, this is what I've been working for, this has been my goal, I've wanted to start my business for so long, I am not going to do anything else but business, right? And while it seems like I have hated the hustle culture for a pretty long time, mostly because of the fact that they're like, if you're wearing the business person hat, you're never going to remove it, because that's who you are. And I'm like, no, you are so much more, right? Like, if you want to do social work, go and do that. Just because you're spending time doing social work or painting or playing with your dogs or singing or dancing or whatever the hell you want to do, right? Like, I read and write fan fiction, I still do that. And
I love that.
yeah, it's my guilty pleasure and I love it. Like, I used to cringe away from it, but now I'm just like, I get so much creative release in that way, where I'm like, this is work, this has to work, if this doesn't work, I'm going to die. Like, there is no such limitations I put on myself in a scenario like that. I'm just like, I'm writing for myself. If people enjoy it, good. If they don't enjoy it, well, okay. I mean, not everything's supposed to be made for everyone else out there. So I feel like that resonated with me really deep, because of the fact that that's something that I genuinely work with my clients on, that there is not just one version of you, there is so many more versions that you've been pushing aside, and the stress of not allowing those aspects of yourself to shine can also lead you to burnout.
And just, there are just misconceptions around that, right? And I get it. I was an athlete growing up. I mean, talk about identity, right? And then when that ended quite abruptly, I didn't know who I was. So like, there's a huge risk to that. And I absolutely was like, I will never identify with like one thing. And then I went into consulting and I was like, like did it all over again. But there's these misconceptions that, or maybe it's personality traits that are really common to entrepreneurs, where you're like, I'm giving to my business, I'm giving to my team. And what I have realized through my career, my own experiences working with other people, my clients, colleagues, is those other things, in addition to helping stave off burnout, which you so eloquently pointed out, they also make you the best version of you, which makes you the most visionary, creative, inspiring person. And I have had times where I have had to like put my foot down with a client. One in particular comes to mind where, he was going to be down kind of on vacation with the family. And I said, great, let's have next week be an integration week. We'll cancel our call. And he's like, no, I'm going to be working. Don't worry. And I was like, I really think that you should take a few days and like, just unplug and enjoy your time. And no, I'm going to, I'm taking a vacation in a few months and this, that, and the other. And it's always a fine line, right? Of like, but I said, I really want you to think about this, right? Because what happens is when we're constantly giving, we're constantly on, our brain doesn't have time to recalibrate. Our systems don't have time to dream or intake new information or process, right? We're constantly going, and we actually start triggering our nervous system stuff, which again, topic for another day. But we're not able to be creative and innovative when we are under constant pressure.
Mm.
and when we are only focusing on one thing. And it was really funny because in this situation, he wrote me back a couple days later and he said, I think, okay, I think you might be right. I'm open to it. I'll cancel the call. And so we didn't speak for a week, and he came back on his next call and I said, how are you? You know, we went through our kind of structure of the call and he went, I had this epiphany on the back of a jet ski.
The
And
best
he
place
had
to have an
all these
epiphany.
realizations
Yeah.
from some of the books I'd sent him to read, some of our conversations, da, da, da. And he just had these realizations about his life, and he had realizations about the business. And he was like, I have so many ideas, and I'm like so energized. And I was like, it was just amazing. And it was a real big turning point in our coaching relationship for him to realize how important unplugged time was. And that meant even unplugged time where you're not like, you know, supporting your kids at their sporting events, or, you know, doing good things that are meaningful to you, but actually just unplugged, unplanned, fun time. And, you know, we had a really profound conversation about bringing play and creativity back into life that many of us just like leave behind in childhood. But if you're thinking about doing things no one's ever done and changing the world and coming up with new ideas and services and products, like, you need that creativity and imagination. That's what innovation is. We give it a big adult word, but it's thinking about things that aren't real yet.
And is that, you know, like all those things that we used to dream about as children, that we're going to do this and this and this, and then the society or our parents or our families or whatever, teachers, friends were like, you can't do this, this doesn't make sense. And so we are like, okay, I'm not going to do it, I'm going to shut off, I'm going to be like, tell me what to do and I'll do it. So we have been so used to shutting off our inner child that we don't even let it come out. And when it does come out, it's going to go out crazy. And you're going to be like, how have I never had this idea before? How have I not thought of this before? But it's because you let that inner child actually out and be like, you have the space to be present, right? And I love that a lot because I read comics sometimes. I mean, that's what I love to do. I used to love to do as a kid, and I do that. So like, I genuinely feel like this is something that a lot of people should take away with them, to just let their inner child out. Society is not going to be like, oh, look at him being a child, or look at her being a child. They're going to be like, that's pretty creative, that's pretty unique, look at the way he's living his life, right? Like,
100%.
I feel like I could go on and on about burnout and a lot of things that you said in your answer there, because it resonates a lot with what the kind of work that I do. So I was just like, this is amazing. But I'm gonna shift the spotlight back to you, and I wanted to ask you this: what do you think is the end result you want your client to walk away with?
I think, it's probably just trying to synthesize what I was talking about earlier, which is, you know, a robust, or actually, I love the concept of anti-fragile, which is quite a long and heavy book, but if anyone's interested, the idea that like strong is actually like resilient is not necessarily like what we're going for. We're actually going for anti-fragile, where like chaos makes you thrive. But really having the structures and processes and people in place that enable them to step more and more into their next level leadership and embody that creativity and that vision that can, you know, ideate or pivot the business model, that has the tools to work through, you know, strategic plan and be seeing the future while communicating that to a team and organizational structure that can focus on the day-to-day. Because it differs between everyone. Not everyone wants to be the CEO, and it's something I've really recognized with my clients. But let's take that premise as the base, that the CEO to me is the captain of the ship. And as a captain of a ship, if you are down rowing with the rest of the team, maybe you're a real strong rower, great. So maybe you're driving things forward. Maybe you're too strong of a rower and you're turning the boat in circles. Maybe you're distracting the team. There's a lot of things that could be good or bad about being down there and like being in the trenches. But what is definitely not happening is you are not at the helm. You are not looking at the map. You are not looking at the horizon. So how the heck do you know where you want to go? And how can you communicate to everyone else what they need to know to make that happen? Right. And so creating an understanding of who they are as a leader, what their style is, you know, the understanding of like, where's the line of vulnerability and transparency? How can I continue to give and mentor without spending all my time and not having time, you know, to run the business?
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff there that I really want for my clients to have that knowledge, have those kind of like guide rails of who am I as a leader? What's my role? How do I spend my time focusing on what drives the business and what's impactful, knowing that everything else and everyone else in the business is there to translate and execute on that in the day-to-day, in the month-to-month.
Yeah, I love that a lot, especially the captain analogy. That was really, really good. And it really drove the point across. But I want to ask you this, why is it important for you that your client walks away with this? Like, what is in it for you?
Oh gosh. I think I realized a long time ago that like impact is what gets me out of bed in the morning. And I alluded to it in kind of my journey when the kind of impact felt like it left consulting, when I didn't feel like what we were doing was really creating change. It really took the wind a lot out of my sails. And so for me, helping others achieve feels better for me than doing and achieving those things myself.
I love that a lot. I wanted to ask you this. So we have gone on your journey. We have spoken about it all. I wanted to ask you this. What were some of the obstacles that you faced in your journey as a coach? Like when you started when you were like, I'm going to be a coach, let's do this, let's get this party started. What were the obstacles that you faced? And what solutions did you come up with to overcome those obstacles?
It's such a good question. I feel like there's so many.
Top 5 or
I think probably I would say like 2 big ones, maybe a third one.
Yeah.
The first one was really, I'm a consultant, let's go with 3. There's always 3. The first one was overcomplicating it and not owning my worth.
Okay.
I thought I had to have some crazy, unique, sexy USP that encompassed everything I knew and valued.
Yeah, same.
And I just let that like just drag me down from actually like moving forward when I had some real good ideas. But when I finally acknowledged that strategy and operations may not be sexy, but everyone needs it.
They do.
I started and my business took off literally immediately. And I will say that was thanks to taking a couple of days off for the first time in a year and a half. I took like 4 or 5 days off and a very frank conversation with a fellow entrepreneur and coach in a totally different industry, but who just basically said what I would say to somebody and was like, what are you doing? Like, you are overcomplicating it. Why? What are you great at?
Yeah.
That was the first one. The second one, I would say, is self-promotion. I knew from my background, I could sell teams, I could sell projects, and I could even sell businesses. Selling myself had never come easily to me. So I knew that my biggest obstacle was going to be that. And the solution that I came up with was to invest. So I invested in coaching, which came with community that would support me with some tangible things, as well as guide me and hold me accountable.
Yeah.
And honestly, I would say it's probably still my biggest challenge, but it's coming along well. And I'm feeling more and more inspired as, you know, I intake and digest and process and have conversations. You know, I get more and more ideas and I get more excited about the self-promotion.
Yeah.
So that was the second and a really big one as well. And I guess the third one is really just adjusting to the life that I'm building and living my values, which sounds maybe a little bit odd, but it's building a lifestyle that inspires me. And this is the first time in a number of years that I'm only running one business. And I don't have 20 plus team members, let alone clients, and everything else like looking for me at any given hour of the day. And so it's kind of a come down that takes time, and to resize and reframe and establish my own processes and support team that works for me, and to be patient with myself. It's really just taking my own medicine.
Yeah. Okay. You know what? That resonated so hard with me, especially the self-promotion part of it, because you could have seen from my expressions that I was like, because I used to work in marketing. I used to create content for other people. But when it comes to myself, I'm like, hi, I'm Madhurima.
100%.
Yeah, this is me. This is what I do. Let me come back in 10 weeks and tell you how I do it. Like, I am so shy. It's not even shyness. It's just like this cringe that comes with it. That why?
It's such a block. Yeah. I mean, I mentioned the community. I have these amazing people in my community, and they'll be like, what's holding you back? Like, and I'll be like, honestly, if this was for anyone else, it would be done. Like, it would be done, dusted. It would be amazing, but it's for me.
Yeah.
And it's a combination of perfectionism and all the other things I'm, working on.
Yeah.
Just, it's tough.
No, I definitely agree that is such a huge thing. I feel like for every entrepreneur and even every artist there, right? Like every creative, like I used to write books and I'll be like, I'm not gonna promote this. I'm just gonna let this be. Whoever sees this can come and buy it. But I'm just gonna I wrote the book. I'm done. Right? Like I created the service. I'm done. Whoever has to come and take it away because I don't want to do it. But I
just want to deliver.
Yeah, I just want to do what I want to do.
Exactly. I'm like, I just want to deliver. My clients are great. And I've been so fortunate. My clients mostly come through my network. So I will say the pressure has not been on to hit the marketing that hard either. But I'm realizing how much I value, providing value to people, and that it's not, what I put out there is not just about getting clients. It's about providing insight and information. Yeah. And I think that's where it's helped me shift the perspective is I could probably get away without it and run a successful business. I am. Yeah. And when I do put things out, people really engage with it, and I get a lot of feedback and comments, and I'm like, oh, it's helping people, which is what I love doing. So I should do more of this.
Yeah, I definitely agree on that. With that, I wanted to ask you, since this is a spiritual podcast, or it started out as a spiritual podcast, what do you think are some of your favorite self-care or spiritual routines that you use in your daily life to balance your work and your personal life?
Yeah, I mean, this has been such a journey for me. I grew up and spent majority of my life living very much in my masculine, being just practical and pragmatic person. And not being particularly in touch with emotions or anything, which if you know. And it's been funny because fully diving into my coaching career has actually really amplified my coaching journey. So I've invested more in coaching the last year than I probably spent on my degrees, multiple degrees.
Yeah.
And more importantly, really unlocked a lot of sort of internal knowledge and mechanisms, and then embedded some practices that support my mindset, my growth, my nervous system regulation, that allows me to be my best and support others. So, yeah, what specifically what that looks like for me. I look at it as a tool belt. And it's really interesting. I've had some very challenging times in the last few months, and it has become so apparent to me how much faster I'm able to like regulate. And it doesn't make the problem or the stimulus go away, but the awareness of like being able to like know you have the tool and then use the tool semi-effectively. It's a wild the impact that has on your life. So my tool belt is meditation, breath work, energy work, and journaling. Coaching, therapy, and a really, really great community who are also on journeys of self-growth and entrepreneurship. Fitness or movement, fueling my body and my brain, and sleep hygiene. And then I think like just how that all keeps growing is like voracious learning and application and being open to trying new things.
Yeah, I love that a lot. I love the aspect of tool belt, and I love the aspect of coaching, because I feel like this is such a thing for coaches. I mean, personally speaking, and from the few coaches that I'm friends with, that I have seen that every time we coach in a scenario like that, or we are coaching each other, it's often the things that we coach others on that we need help with. And it's like,
tell me about it.
I already know this. Why am I not doing it? But I think that's where the community aspect comes in. That's where the aspect of I have always held others, and that's what I will continue to do for the foreseeable future. But I have never been held in the same way for the same situations that I'm helping others with. Right. So I feel like go out there, get coached, because it is genuinely so amazing, especially if you're a person who has been caring for other people all your life. Feel yourself
I
be
could
cared.
not agree more with you.
Thank you so much, because it's like the first time it happened to me, I was like, my coach genuinely asked me, you do this, right? And I'm like, yeah, like same, like I need help with the things that I help other people with. My next question to you, Alex, is this: what is your current soul's conquest, and what was a soul's conquest of your past?
Oh, that's a good one. Let me start with the past, fairly recent past, but past is truly uncovering and loving my true self. All the components that make up who I am, and just unconditionally holding those really tenderly. And this for me still feels really woo-woo to say. I'm just going to say that for anyone who listens to this, who's maybe like still in their practical and pragmatic space. Like, I hear you.
Yeah.
I think, I say that because growing up thinking and being so different, probably to some extent neurodivergent, but also unwilling and unable to like conform. And I didn't realize just how much I kind of thrived on like, it's fine, I'm different, whatever. Like, I don't need other people. But actually didn't realize how much shame and sort of not good enough messaging had seeped in over the years, and that I was carrying that, and how much I really veered into objective success arenas like sports and career to deal with that. So coming to love myself after, I would say, quite some time away, as I went through some really major changes and reacquainting with myself, was like such a profound shift. And then that was then coming to love myself to the exclusion of what I was achieving. Even what I was doing in any given moment has been monumental, foundational, like earth-shattering change. And I think that is what kind of got me to where I am, and to be able to get this business off the ground and just go deeper and deeper and evolve. I mean, the evolution of the last year and a bit has been insane. in a wonderful way, but wild.
Yeah.
And then as to what it is now, I will admit to going through what I would almost call a little bit of a dark night of the soul, and a little bit of a child like, this isn't fair. I did the work last year.
Yeah.
I thought I was done. But now I would say that is shaping up to really be tested in the arena of the external world, as I have more epiphanies about the underlying root causes of some of my reactions or perspectives, and starting to unpick those so that I can really firmly live in the present and not the past, not be overtaken by, my inner child fears. So without going into too much detail, I think that is very recent for me, very, very relevant. And depending on the day, it feels empowering, heartbreaking.
Yeah.
A lot of other fill in the blank, profound words. But really grateful.
I am laughing because Alex was talking to you about this earlier. That was literally what I was going through. I was like, I dealt with this. I healed from this. Why is this back? And like having to go through those emotions, but at a deeper level, because you genuinely thought that you were done with it, right? Like I have healed out of it. So why am I feeling this at a deeper level? And just that recognition that maybe this is happening to let me know that how am I reacting to it right now in this part of my life? How am I reacting to it? And what can I do to create a better environment?
I have like two analogies that I like. One that I think everyone kind of knows, which is like the onion, right? The reality is like, we have layers, our past has layers. The more we, unpeel and uncover, there's always another layer. And I think that's, for me, what I'm dealing with now is like, oh, I uncovered a layer and I was like, great, now I'm like leveled up. But like there was another layer there and I just was so unaware of it. And at the same time, something I use with a lot of my clients is, and it kind of relates to that tool belt I was talking about, is we're on an upward spiral. And whatever you're dealing with now, great, you're going to deal with it and you're going to move on. And let's say you're at 1.5 million in your business right now. At another point, whether it's 3 million or 4 million or 7 million, you're going to come to that again. Just like you would never expect that your accounts payable process when you run $1 million business is going to be fine for your $10 million business. The leadership mindset, the people management, the beliefs, the possibilities are also going to be different, right? And you're going to have to reassess them and they're going to come back around, and you're going to have more tools and you're probably going to be able to move through them more quickly. And every once in a while, one of them's going to be real big and it's going to bump you a little bit off track, and you're going to have to come back. And that's the reality. And I think being aware and admitting that to ourselves, that it's not a one and done. Is actually so helpful, even if it maybe feels a bit discouraging.
Yeah, I hear you. Those two analogies have been on my mind for a pretty long time. So thank you for bringing that out. And thank you for sharing that with us. My next question to you is this: what is something that has happened in your life quite recently that has created a lot of impact on you?
As I said, I feel like the last few months, there has been so much growth that it almost feels debilitating. And, that kind of dark night of the soul, going back and realizing some kind of like inner child stuff that just had never put two and two together, having that also come out in kind of parts of my personal life. I think community has been the community I have built, probably not even in the last year, in the last 8 to 9 months, and how connected that is, and the support and love surrounding me, and the realization that I've attracted that, I've called that in, that it is a reflection of me, is just like, really mind-blowing. And trusting that the universe is showing up for me and relinquishing some of my need for control, right? That like past me is just like has to control everything.
Yeah.
I think that combined with my own epiphanies and growth is really helping me to hold myself in my highest, as well as hold others in their highest. And, you know, not to be too focused on business, but it really is like next leveling my life and my business and creating momentum for me to show up and provide value for more people, which then lights them up even more. And just seeing those catalysts in life and how what catalyzes us and how we can be catalysts is really, really impactful and a big mind shift.
Yeah, I love that so much. I'm gonna end this podcast with one last question to you. What is the one last thing that you would like to leave my listeners with?
Anything is possible. And learning what is out there is the first step. You don't know what you don't know. Learning about yourself and exploring is the way to understand what you can do. And only once you know what you can do, can you really understand what you want to do. And I think that can feel really scary sometimes. So remembering that nothing is permanent, just go out there and try. You can always change your mind, but to try and genuinely be all in and actually care about things, that's what lights up life. That's what makes this worth living, right? And I know there's like 100 inspirational quotes probably about that. So I hope that wasn't too much of a cliche.
It wasn't. Yeah.
But literally anything is possible. And so much of our limitations are in here, are, you know, inside of us.
Yeah. Ooh, I love that so much. That was such a good way to end this conversation with Alex. This was so wonderful. I hope you had fun because I surely did.
I did. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I feel like we went really deep.
We did, and I loved it. Like, I would have loved to keep this going on for like hours upon hours, because genuinely I resonated with you so much at so many different levels. I feel like it's also because the kind of work we do is very similar or very connected to each other, that I was just like, I'm so excited. Let's have a further conversation. Let's dive deeper. But time is also valuable. So I genuinely thank you for being here, showing up and being present and just sharing your journey with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was amazing.
Yay.